And welcome to our series of Blueprint Labs workshops. We're so excited that you guys were able to join us today. My name is Ruthie Senanayaka, and I'm with Blueprint Technologies, and we have Eric Vogelpohl as our guest speaker today. So thank you, Eric, for joining. And I will, give you guys a quick introduction of what Blueprint does, and I will also let you know a couple of housekeeping tips as well. So if you are not too familiar with Blueprint, we are a technology solutions company that does everything from strategy to execution. If you have specific questions about Blueprint, feel free to check out our website at bpcs.com. You can also email us at info@bpcs.com. And for this whole workshop, feel free to hop in and you should have gotten the login credentials. If you did not get any credentials, you can always just message me on Zoom and I will make sure to get that to you so that you can follow along in real time, or you can just watch Eric as he does it as well. So either one, totally up to you. And we want this to be as interactive as possible. So if you have questions, you can add that to the Q&A section. You can ask that anonymously, or you can also just add your name in there. You can also ask the question live. You just have to hit the talk button, and then I will allow you to talk, and then, or the raise your hand, and I will allow you to talk. And you can ask the question live from Eric as well. But I will allow Eric to do his introduction and kick things off.
Yeah, guys, all right. Thanks for being with me. Yeah, Eric Vogelpohl, so have tech and strategy at Blueprint, and I am filling in today for my friend and colleague, Rick Freitas. Rick is on PTO. Normally, he does the SQL workshops once a month. And of course, we have other teammates that do the infrastructure as code workshop and the data engineering workshop and the data science workshop. Rick normally does this one. He asked if I could pitch in, and I said I would love to because I enjoy this stuff so much. So with that, let's dive in. And again, if you didn't get your temporary username and password to the Blueprint Databricks environment that we use for these hands-on workshops, ping Ruthie. She can provide that to you real fast, and you can. If not, just watch. We'll walk through Databricks and SQL and tables and the Unity catalog and all kinds of fun stuff, and you'll get the gist. So let me do this. And again, if you have questions, say them out loud, or Ruthie, put them in the QA and she'll interrupt me. So I'm going to share my screen here if I can figure out how. So share screen, open settings, Oh, Ruthie, it's telling me that I need to reboot restart Zoom real fast. It must have installed an update. So I will join you right back in 1 second. Okay.
Okay, sounds great. And in the meantime, I'll just let you guys know we do have quite a few of these workshops and webinars lined up for the next couple of months. You can always visit our website on the events page. We have a bunch of them lined up on there. We also do post them on our social media. So you can follow us along on LinkedIn, Twitter, Threads, wherever you'd like to follow us on, and we'll be sure to add them on there, and you can sign up through Zoom to be notified for any new and upcoming webinars as well. So yeah, I think Eric is back on. There you go.
All right, how about now? All right, are we good to go?
Yep, we're good. I do not see your screen though.
All right, I'm sharing it right now. How about now?
That's perfect.
All right, there we go. Yeah, I got a new Mac and new Zoom, and it had that security warning. I should have done that earlier. Okay, so let's start this off. We've got a pretty simple agenda here. Real quick, just to level set everybody where I am in a Databricks workspace. So workspaces are where teams come to collaborate, or engineers come to do engineering work, or data scientists come to do data science work, or analysts come to do advanced SQL analytics work, it is your home base, it is your workspace. And I'm in this workspace up here called BP Workspace Dev something or other workspace. And I am logged in this case is me. If you've logged in at home and you're playing along, you'll have a different account that you see here. Real quick piece of housekeeping. So if you're new to Databricks, they've just released a new user experience, and that user experience is toggled on and off in this very bottom left corner. So in the bottom left, you'll see that I just disabled it. So now it's in the legacy mode or the old UI mode. I recommend you go to the new UI mode. So you click enable, and it just makes navigating a lot easier. It's a cleaner, slicker user experience. So it's very nice. So again, this is Databricks. And right now I am, excuse me, again, logged in as me, and I am staring at a notebook. So, and Databricks, everything is done for the most part in a notebook orientation, at least on the engineering side. And what I've done here is I've just used a notebook as a means to create a PowerPoint slide. So if you look at the navigation of this notebook, it should look like any other, say, Jupyter or Zeppelin notebook that you may be familiar with in the past. I can insert cells, I can type code here, I can make this a SQL statement, and I can, select from tables, or I can code in Python or Scala, or I can do data science work. Or as I've done here, I could turn this to Markdown, and I could just make this a simple hello, and it would just print the word hello. So that's what you're seeing right now. This is just a notebook. I just used it to make a PowerPoint slide. I'm going to delete that cell. So here we go. So that's how to toggle on the new UI. We're staring at a notebook. Real quick, other navigation. So all notebooks are organized in a workspace. A workspace, if you click on it here, takes you to a typical folder layout, or maybe you have a repo, like a GitHub repository, or some other Git-oriented repository. We use GitHub at Blueprint. So you can see here, I am navigating my repo. I have one for Databricks demos, and I've got a bunch of Databricks demos. And of course, all my fun stuff is in the folder SQL Workshop, as you would expect. Got some data engineering work that I've done, and then back to that notebook that we just launched. So that's how to open a notebook. I can see some recent notebooks, etc. We're going to get to data next, because that's the most important area in Databricks. I can examine workflows. We're not going to do that today. I can also take a look at the compute that I'm using. I don't need a cluster to do what I'm doing right here, because we're just looking at website. We're not actually running any compute at this point. So I don't need one. If I was connected to a cluster, you would see it highlighted here, and it would be on. And the section of the navigation that we're going to focus on today is going to deal a lot with these objectives. So we're going to play with the SQL editor. We're going to query data from our tables. We're going to save and build queries. We're going to build a dashboard. We're going to play with alerts. We're going to look at query history of our data warehouse. And we're going to look at some performance heuristics of how our queries are running. And we're going to take a look at the actual compute node, the actual compute behind our SQL Server warehouse. So from a navigation perspective, you can kind of think of this first collection of workspaces to kind of navigate around your folder structure, etc. Then this next group is all around your SQL environment. And then we've got some live tables for kind of advanced data pipeline creation, and of course, machine learning. So that's where we are. Now, let's navigate around Unity Catalog. So for those that aren't familiar, 2-3 years ago, something like that now, Databricks released Unity Catalog. Unity Catalog is the new superstructure that provides a cohesive security, data catalog, data navigation, access control, auditing, you name it, all across the data, all across the various workspaces that you have to have, that you may have in your organization. Prior to Unity Catalog, workspaces and data on your data lake were kind of a one-to-one relationship. And if you wanted to get access to somebody else's table, you had to know where that data lived, and you maybe had to get permission from them, or maybe you used their workspace. It was a little bit siloed. Unity Catalog, hence the name, unifies all the workspaces and data objects around the Delta Lake, so saving things in Delta format, plus a whole bunch of other things, and we'll get into those. So let's really navigate and get comfortable with how to do that. So I mentioned that I was going to leave this data tab next. That's now. This data tab is by far the most important tab in the environment. So what I'm going to do, just for my own navigation, I'm just going to duplicate this. I'm just going to duplicate my tab so that I can always come back here. So I'm going to go to this tab, and I'm going to go ahead and navigate to data. This is almost the best way to think about Unity Catalog. Maybe this should be called the Unity Catalog tab. They didn't, they just called it data. So this gives me and all users in your organization a window into your environment. And you can see I've got the ability to search my catalog. So let's just start there. We built data sets for you. We built 3. So the New York taxi, flights data, and the Iowa data about liquor sales from the state of Iowa, their public data environment. So if you pretend that you're an analyst and you were just hired at a company and you don't know anything about anything, and your job is to do, we'll do some liquor sales analysis, alcohol beverage analysis that we got from the state of Iowa. If you didn't know anything, you didn't know who to ask, you didn't know what ticket to put in, if you didn't have a catalog, you probably aren't going to go too far in a data warehousing environment. You're really not going to know how to navigate the structure. Unity Catalog makes it super simple. So again, if I'm just some new analyst and I just type Iowa, I hit enter, and the catalog collects all information, of course, about tables. You kind of know, duh. I see here that I have 2 tables. You can see their name, and you can see the catalog and the schema that they're in. We'll get to that naming convention in a minute. But not only that, if you had permission to all the notebooks that I developed, and I happen to have developed a bunch of notebooks to process and engineer this data, you would see all the notebooks that you had rights to see as well that contain the word Iowa anywhere, and the code and descriptions and markdown or whatever. Any jobs, I don't happen to have any jobs that run nightly or any streaming jobs, but if I did, you'd see those. And queries. So all queries in the organization, whether they're created by you or by others, if they're shared with you, it's security trim. So if they're shared with you, simply searching the word, a data product that happens to be unique for you will yield what you want it to yield. You can find dashboards and files and repos and libraries, and everything for the most part is an object, and the object is registered in the Unity Catalog. So that's kind of the search field. You can navigate down. So for example, if you really wanted to get specific, maybe you have a data warehouse that's huge at your organization. I've seen companies with 50,000 tables. So the first thing they want to do is maybe search a specific catalog. So this is important. And Databricks, like many cloud environments and cloud warehouses, Databricks follows a 3-part naming convention. So 2 periods, 3 parts. And the first part is the catalog. So just the catalog itself. I made a catalog. They're arbitrary. You can call them whatever you want. I made one called workshop, hence the workshop. And then the next is the period. So workshop dot, and then it's either schema or database. They're the same thing. In Databricks, a schema and a database are the same thing. Doesn't matter what you call it. I created one called data. So this is where I just happen to put all my tables. And in this case, now Iowa is focused just on workshop.data. Again, in this case, it's small and I have 2 anyway, but in a huge environment, knowing how to pick by, say, maybe catalog results to domain for your organization, and schema relates to, I don't know, the use of the data or some subproduct category, you can navigate easily. Okay, so that's how you navigate. And of course, these are clickable. Now let's take a look at an actual table itself. So if I didn't want to use the search model, which we just did, I can navigate the Unity catalog. Again, just like you'd normally navigate a SQL environment. So in this case, I'm going to go to workshop is my catalog dot my schema or my database, so data, and then you can see the object types that I have. I've got 4 object types, so tables, volumes, these are things like flat files and that type of stuff. This is new. Functions that I've registered and written myself. So any functions that I've written for calculating some weird thing, I can register that as a function and use it. And then data science models. We're just going to go to tables. And in this case, as I mentioned, we've prepared 3 data sets. So flights, the liquor, and then New York City taxi. And we can play with all of these, and we will. So if I was interested in, say, give me the details about sales gold, I just click on that table and the Unity catalog brings up all of its metadata instantly. So I see all of the columns, the normal columns. I can give it a description. To further enhance the catalog, I can give that an actual piece of metadata, a comment, if I want, or I can write that in the code. Could have done it that way. So I get the columns, of course, the schema, and then we've got sample data. So you see kind of like the top 100 or the top 500, however many it is. In this case, this data table is pretty big. It occupies a pretty big space on the lake. It's about 3/4 gigabyte. In fact, Unity tells me exactly on the data lake how many files make up, how many Delta files make up this table. It's 12. And roughly the size. This is something like, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 million, 20 million rows of data. I forgot. We'll look. So you can see a quick demo. You can see details about it. So these are kind of the nuts and bolts. This is kind of the underside of the Delta Lake. I can see very specific pieces of information. I can see that it's a managed table as opposed to an unmanaged table. This means that Unity has control of this table. If I drop this table, Unity would drop the table and it would delete the data in a period of time. If this were an unmanaged table, an external table, etc., Unity, if I drop the table, would just drop the table out of the catalog, but the data would be up to you. You would have to change that elsewhere. I can see a bunch of statistics about the Spark environment and a bunch of settings. I can get a bunch of other pieces of data when the table was made, who made it, et cetera, et cetera. This is amazing for auditing. I can see permissions. So we've granted 2 types of permissions. We've granted the ability to select only. So we've security trimmed this for our users. We've only they can only select this table, as well as we put it on the schema level. So it's a bit redundant. We can also see table history. So this is amazing about Databricks. So with table history, I can see every time I have mutated or I've edited this table. And I can see crazy things down to, I just changed a column, or I ran the optimize, or, I created the table, on and on. Ever since the table was born, I can see every incremental change, and I can go back and see the world as if it was 3 hours ago or 5 days ago, or however long history goes back for, and do some snapshot work. I can also see lineage. So this is really important. We know that the notebook I used to create this has a relationship to this table, and sure enough, it does. Unity catalog is saying, hey, you used this notebook to produce this table. So they have an intrinsic relationship. I can go back and see the provenance of this table by examining exactly this notebook. If there were multiple notebooks that built this table, I'd see those. Maybe we've got some downstream tables. So does this table contribute to any downstream connections? Does it contribute to any upstream connections? You can also see this by way of a lineage map. So I can see that this silver table, it ends in silver, which is curated table at its lowest grain, contributed to this gold table. So I can see that I use the silver table to create the gold table. So they have an intrinsic one-to-one mapping. So in addition, some insights. So as your company continues to use this table in greater and greater modes, they can see insights that other users have found, if they have the rights to, about this data table. So you can see frequent queries, frequent users, frequent dashboards, frequent notebooks, all these kind of things. So very helpful. Okay, We won't get into Delta sharing and we won't get into external data at that point. This is another aspect of Unity Catalog. But at this point, I think we're probably ready to leave kind of the search and navigation environment. Now we're going to jump over and start playing with the data and start playing with BI and visualizations and analytics. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump back just to make certain I didn't forget anything. We covered data exploration, discovery, lineage. We saw the permissions and grants. Okay, we're good. Now let's jump back to our tab here. And I'm going to leave the workspace in the data environment, and I'm just going to click right on SQL Editor. So now I'm jumping into the kind of the SQL analytics portion of your environment. And the first thing that I want to do is I want to make certain that I have a warehouse up and running. In this case, I do. It's just Blueprint Data Warehouse Pro 1. This is a type Pro. There are serverless types available now. I have turned on a ultra high-end security compliance feature for some testing, and Databricks does not yet have the serverless SKU working with that compliance-enabled piece. It's coming shortly, but that's not enabled yet. So I'm using the standard Pro type of the cluster type. I can see my clusters up and running. I set it to small because it's just me and a handful of you. We're not doing too much. Turns off in 45 minutes, and it has some permissions. And I'm the owner. Admins can also manage this cluster, but workshop users, which you guys are, can only use it. Which means when you initiate a query, in this case, the cluster is not serverless. If it were serverless, it would come on instantly. But in this case, you can wake the cluster up, and you can use the cluster for SQL and things you have permission to. You can't delete it. You can't delete this cluster. You can't resize it. You can just simply use the cluster. Okay, so that's the first thing that I wanted to cover. I wanted to make certain that we understood the serverless and the Pro piece. So let's come back to our data environment. And we're going to go here to the SQL editor. And this should be really common for most folks. Databricks has a wonderful data studio environment. That's generally what I call it. I like calling it the data studio. It's pretty simple. You can see it looks like many other data studios that are available for cloud data warehouses. In this case, I'm probably seeing more catalogs than you are because I'm an admin. You will only see Workshop and some of the others. But again, we'll navigate to data, and maybe I'm interested, I don't know, in Iowa liquor sales. I could do something so simple here as just insert that table name, and we can start with just the brutally simple, select everything from table. By the way, I just hit on the keyboard Shift-Enter. That's typical notebook usage, just Shift-Enter, maybe Control-Enter works as well. Or you can hit Run. Notice that it's going to only pull back the top 1,000 rows. Just because you wouldn't want to stream everything back to your studio. It's just a waste of time. And yeah, you can start to navigate the data. You can export the data. You can do a bunch of things with this at this point. You can write anything in normal ANSI SQL dialect. So functions and any non-procedural, just declarative ANSI SQL works in this environment. Databricks continues to add functions as the life goes on. They're very well documented, but you get all the normal SQL expressions. So one other piece of information, notice that I put catalog.schema.table name. And that's important right now because if you notice, the SQL Studio is set up to a different catalog.schema environment. So if I were to take the prefix off and just do what we normally do and say select everything from table, I'm probably going to get an error because it doesn't know exactly where that table is. However, you can solve that a couple ways. One, I can pre-navigate to Workshop and then choose data, which is like running a use command. You could also run a use command. It's like running a use command, which says my default catalog and table schema name are these two. Now, when I click run and I just put the table name, it will work because that's just how it works. But best practice is to say workshop.data in this case, then that way you've always got a fully qualified object name and you don't have to remember to toggle those on. Okay, so that's the SQL environment. You can create additional queries by creating additional queries, very simple. But let's do this. I have pre-cooked a whole bunch of analytics that are inside of a workspace. So what I'm going to do is, again, I'm going to pretend that I'm an analyst and that I have been shared by way of the catalog some queries that I might find interesting. So let's say, for instance, I need to do some, I don't know, revenue analytics for the state of Iowa. I'm just making something up. I'm going to go back to my catalog search and I'm going to type Iowa, probably good enough. I'm just going to hit enter. And I know the table exists, so I don't have to be told about the table, but let's take a look at some of these queries that we've got, that we've pre-created and we've stored in an open folder. So one of them is just Iowa liquor sales, and we've got current year sales and top 10. There's a couple other things. I think I did one called sales margin on top end, and I wrote this one. So again, if you've got rights to this, you can see it. I'm just going to simply click on this. It's going to open that query up. And you can see what I've done here is I just said, select item description. Item description literally is the alcoholic product itself. That literally is the product. And then I said, hey, I want to do a quick margin analysis here. So take sales dollars minus the state's cost divided by sales dollars times 100. Give me the profit percent. And then I also want to get total bottles sold. These are just columns that I've gotten. I've added some rounding around it to make it look pretty from my table where it's this year. That's just a quick way of saying where 2023, group by, et cetera, limit by 10. And I'm going to hit shift enter. Notice my table is fully qualified, so I don't have to rely on flipping that feature. And we get some data. So we can immediately see, because I've done a descending sort, we can see that at least my favorite, Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey, has a healthy profit margin. In fact, all of these have a healthy profit margin. It looks like, frankly, the state of Iowa just doubles the cost, which is not bad for business, right? From top line, you just simply double your product cost, and that looks like your sales price, because that's kind of what the analysis shows. And they sell the most bottles, this many bottles sold so far this year. I don't know if that's 1.5 million. I guess that's 1.5 million. Followed by Tito's vodka and all the way down the line. Now, it's a little bit ugly to see it this way, of course. So what I've done is I've just created a quick little visual. To do that, I just clicked create visual, but I've already created one for this query. And you can see here, it's just a simple combo chart. And I put margin on the right axis. So you see profit margin at that percent. And then each of the top, 10, the top 10 items sorted. So if I wanted to edit this, I would just simply edit this. And I'm in a normal Plotly-like environment. I can turn this to a horizontal chart. I can play around with the names of the axes. I can sort it in different ways. I can reverse sort. I can change the scale of the axes. Can change the color. I can turn on and off data labels. Maybe data label being on is a little too much ink, not enough information. So I'm gonna hit save to this, and I'm good. I've saved it. So notice that I come up here. My query is now eligible to be resaved because I've made a change. So I'm going to resave this, and it just updated that for everybody that wants to use this query. Now this query is fine, and this query is good. But maybe I want to put this on a dashboard. Maybe I want to get it out of the query view and put it on a dashboard. So we're going to do that. In fact, we're going to do it from scratch. So I'm going to go here to dashboards, and I'm going to go ahead and delete the dashboard that I already created. So I'm going to click it, and I'm going to just move it to trash and say, to heck with it. This company has no dashboards. You can see we have 0 dashboards at this point. That's fine. We're going to come back to the query. Come back to our SQL editor, come back to our friend, come back to our combo chart, and I can just simply drop down and say, add the dashboard. Now, because I have no dashboard, logically, it's going to say, pick a dashboard. Well, we don't have one. So we need to create a new one. So we'll call it Iowa liquor sales seems fine to me. And we'll say save. And I've effectively added, or pinned is a common term. I've pinned that visual to that dashboard. It acknowledges that I've done that successfully. And I've created another object, right? I've got another object in the Unity catalog, and it is now the dashboard. And it only has one graphic on it. I can see that here. I can star it if I think it's my favorite. So here we go. I'm gonna run this. It will run the query that I wrote behind that. And away we go. I can tag it. I can schedule this. So I can build a schedule and say, hey, run this every whenever. And if a certain value exceeds X, I can alert. I can send things to a webhook. I can send things to Slack or PagerDuty or Teams or whatever your workaday habit is. I'm a Slack and Teams person myself. So there are times that I've got some dashboards and queries that run that just send me an alert nicely formatted directly into Teams, and the whole team can just keep track of it. So that's how you would schedule this. Now let's enrich this. Let's keep this going. So in this case, this is fine here. I don't really need to move this around. We'll go back to our SQL editor experience. We'll click a new query and we'll open an existing. In this case, I'm going to just navigate manually. I can go to my queries and see if I have any my queries under view. Actually, let's go back to all queries and we'll just search for Iowa again. We'll open this one. You know what? Now we'll do this. It's easier to see all the ones I've curated. So if we come to workspace, go to shared. I created a folder that's available to everyone, where I actually put all of the individual items themselves. So instead of using the Unity catalog, you could just navigate directly to Iowa liquor sales. And sure enough, we have a couple. So we have, let's say, this one's cool. Say the top 10 items word cloud. It's kind of a neat one. So I'm going to bring this up, and essentially I just wrote a cheesy little select statement. Select the count as frequency of the item from our gold table where it's this year, same, limit 10. We're going to run that. And this is going to do nothing more than count the number of times the product appears, sorted, descending. And in this case, I wanted to produce a word cloud. So we have a word cloud. We can see that Tito's and Cinnamon and Captain Morgan and Black Velvet, those look interesting. At least repeating from a frequency perspective, mostly sold. So same argument. Let's enrich our dashboard. So we can add dashboard. We have a dashboard to actually choose from this time. We don't need to create a new one. So I say add, it's validated that it's added. Of course, we can go to the dashboard, and now we have two objects. Now, at this point, you would start making this thing presentable. I would argue this dashboard's not very presentable at this point. It's awfully cluttered. I've got text sizes that are probably not great. I'm probably redundant here with respect to showing the legend on the right. It's cramping my style. I might want to change some color structures. And of course, you can do all of that. I can also move this object around, so I can edit this dashboard, and I can move these objects around so they just snap to a grid line as you would expect them to. If I wanted to build it a little bit wider, of course, I would make it a little bit wider, and that would give me some more room on the bottom, and it would auto save that layout. Yeah, and I can provide permissions to this, so I can share it with only a certain number of people in the organization, and we can continue to edit. So you may look at this dashboard and you say, geez, I really want to edit this object. How would I do that? So you just click on the ellipses and we can say, hey, let's view the query or edit the visualization around this. And let's go turn off a handful of these features that are cramping things up a little bit. So maybe I won't show labels. Maybe I better. Yeah, I'll show labels at least there. What is x-axis? We'll keep that. Series, I like those. Colors are fine. Data labels, yeah, maybe we'll keep the data labels on. Come back. Do I want to do anything with dollar amounts? It's probably okay if I put a dollar amount here. You can see it affects that one, but it also affects my percentage, so I don't want to do that. Yeah, I think I'm good. I think I like that. Legend placement. I'm going to go ahead and hide that. We'll just say it's assumed. We'll say save. And now I've got a little bit more breathing space around my environment. Okay, cool. So that's how to build a query, how to navigate my workspace. We know I've attached to a cluster. I have permissions to navigate the Unity environment. And I can select anything and add this and share it, give it proper permissions, and it becomes part of the Unity environment for folks to consume. We talked about some of the alerts. Again, I can create an alert off my data. I can define a query that results in a particular scalar object. So maybe I have a query that says, calculate the average safety, metric for today, and exactly at 11:59, that metric has to be run every night as of today's data. That can become an alert and things that are auto sent out. If it's greater than X, everybody gets an alert. If not, maybe it just goes to a saved report. So let's hit this query history, because this is really important. So if you're an administrator and you want to see who's using your data warehouse and what are they using it for, you can click on query history and you can see every SQL or use statement or a function like describe table to give me a preview of the schema. Anything that the system did to facilitate your query shows up here. So if I had a pretty complex query like we had a bit ago, we had one that was pretty complex. I'll go review this one. This little window slides out and I can see all of the code associated with this. It's got a CTE, you can tell, I think it's got a couple of them. It's running over the full entire data set. You can see that this finished, and I can tell you that this query did not come from cache. This actually read off of our data lake, and it had to read, in this case, it returned 10 rows, but it had to read, read one file. 11 were pruned out because Delta Lake is smart enough to know that because I had a where statement that said where year equal 2023, a lot of the files on the Delta Lake were files for other years. So it was smart enough to know I only needed to read one. And all of its calculations that it's got done here, all of the calculations that it needed to do to calculate this finished in less than a second. So, 977 milliseconds is the wall clock. And of course, a portion of this is a security lookup, and then a portion of it is the execution phase, and then executing the query itself, and then returning the results to my screen. And it breaks it down individually. You can even see the query profile if one's provided. So you can see from the bottom up, it needed to perform a scan, and then an aggregate, then a shuffle, then a K, and a da-da-da-da-da, all the way to the point that it returned the subset of data that represented the 10 rows that I got back in this case. So if you're ever really deeply concerned about the performance of a table, maybe you need some optimization routines, you can go to this UI and you can see exactly what you need to do. You can see how much memory was consumed along the way, how many rows were consumed. So originally it was 1.8 million because it was just 2023. Then we shuffled down till we got to 10, and that's what was returned. So that's query history. All right, well, that covers a lot of it. Ruthie, I'm going to bring you back online. I don't want to tie up anybody else's time if we don't need to. So if we want to open it up for Q&A, or if we want to dive into other areas, I would be more than happy to entertain ideas.
Okay.
Or
Awesome.
heckles.
I'll just wait for one moment to see if anyone wants to add in any questions. You can add it in the chat or the Q&A.
Oh, you're not on mute. Go ahead, one more time. I just turned my speaker on. There you go.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. So yeah, if you'd like, you can go over something else, or we can wrap it up. Oh, looks like you're muted.
I'll stay true to the category of this just being the SQL environment. So this covers the SQL environment.
Awesome.
I will tell folks, if you want to join us for an engineering overview, we'll get into Delta Live tables and engineering and how to build these amazing tables that we've done. We can do that. We also have a data science workshop, and we also have a just getting started with Databricks, like building the environment from scratch. So we have a script that does all this amazing work from scratch. So we have these 3 or 4 workshops that marketing puts on. This one is core to SQL and the query environment and the dashboarding environment and the visual environment. So we'll stay true to that.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Eric. And yeah, next week we have the Unified AI ML workshop coming up. So be sure to sign up for that one. It's going to be a great one as well. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time out of your day. A big thank you to Eric for hosting this workshop, and we hope to see you all on the next one. You can take a look at bpcs.com/events to learn more about the other workshops, and you can also follow us on social media. But thank you everyone again, and have a great rest of your day.